Welcome to Biography Central. You are listening to Life of Sri Ramakrishna, a complete biography. Chapter 3, Infancy. From his very birth, Gadadhar had a strange fascination not only for his parents and near relatives, but also for his neighbors, who came to the cottage of Khudiram whenever possible. The pecuniary condition of the family improved appreciably. Ramkumar's fame as an expert in the performance of all religious rites and ceremonies was spreading far and wide, bringing a fair income to the poor family in its hour of need. Besides, as soon as the happy news of the birth of Gadadhar was sent to Ramchand, Khudiram's nephew, he anticipated the needs of the family and presented it with a cow, in addition to his regular help of 15 rupees a month. 6 months passed, and the time came for the celebration of the ceremony of the first rice-taking, Annaprasana. At first, Khudiram thought it prudent to perform it in a humble way, in the presence of a few relatives. But under the secret instructions of his friend Dharmadas Laha, the Brahmins of the village requested Khudiram to celebrate it with pomp. Khudiram had not the means to manage the festival on such a big scale, but he had to give way to their importunities. He consulted his friend Dharmadas, who cheerfully bore the greater part of the expenses, and the ceremony was performed in a befitting manner. A large number of beggars were fed, and they all blessed the boy. Meanwhile, from the birth of the boy, various supernatural phenomena took place which filled Chandra with alarm. Though at times she was sure that a great soul had deigned to be born as her son, yet her mother's heart was troubled by apprehensions of some future trouble to Gadadhar through the evil influence of spirits or ghosts, which was her way of explaining these extraordinary happenings. Sometimes the child seemed too heavy to carry, and she had to call to her husband for help. A moment later, Gadadhar would be light as ever. As happenings of this sort became rather frequent, poor Chandra became very uneasy. But Khudiram consoled her by saying that such incidents were not strange in the case of a divine child. Besides, their tutelary deity Raghavir would always give protection. This, however, did not pacify the mother, and she fervently prayed to the gods for her son's welfare. The years rolled on, and in 1839, a daughter named Sarvamangala was added to the family. Gadadhar was now 5 years old. He was a healthy boy of exquisite grace. Khudiram was greatly surprised at his wonderful intelligence and memory, even at this early age. The precocious boy learnt by heart the names of his ancestors, the hymns to various gods and goddesses, and tales from the great national epics. Just one hearing was enough. Even after a great lapse of time, he could repeat them. Young as he was, he showed great distaste for certain things, such as the rudiments of mathematics. He was an extremely restless boy, and thinking that school might help him to control this, Khudiram sent him to the village school, where he was soon beloved by both students and teacher. The classes were held in a spacious bungalow belonging to the Laha family, which on festive occasions was used for dramatic performances. There were morning and afternoon sessions. Khudiram's peculiar experiences before Gadadhar's birth had convinced him of the future greatness of his boy. From the very beginning, he viewed him as different. The faults inexcusable in ordinary boys were overlooked in his case, and his spirit of waywardness was condoned. But there was a gulf of difference between the childish pranks of Gadadhar and those of other boys. Generally, when boys are detected in some mischief, they try to excuse themselves and refrain from repetition only through fear of punishment. Gadadhar was different. He freely confessed when caught, but nothing could intimidate him to the point that he would refrain from doing it again, did he so desire. Gentle and affectionate persuasions, however, always had their effects upon him and made him yield, and his sweet nature always prevented him from injuring anyone. At school, Gadadhar made fair progress. He was able to read and write, but his aversion to mathematics continued as before. In those days, minstrels used to go through the villages reciting mythological stories from the epics and Puranas, and the villagers, without any stage setting, would enact them. Gadadhar never missed any of these performances and listened with rapt attention, noticing carefully the pose of the actors. Often, he repeated such dramas before his friends almost verbatim. Such was his wonderful memory. He learned from the potters the art of molding images of gods and goddesses, and then made excellent ones at home. From the painters, he learned to paint them. This was his favorite pastime. Thus, instead of turning his attention to the acquirement of that learning for which he was sent to school, so that later he might earn his livelihood, Gadadhar directed all his energies to the study of the lives and characters of spiritual heroes. Constant study of those subjects often made him forgetful of the world and threw him into deep meditations. As he grew older, these turned into frequent trances whenever his religious feelings were aroused. Besides the great epics, he was interested in the folklore of his own and surrounding villages. Often, he would make copies of some of the interesting incidents from books or manuscripts. Some of these may still be seen at the Belur Mutt. As he grew older, other traits of character began to manifest themselves. For example, he showed wonderful courage. The places that other people shunned as being haunted, he visited without any fear. Almost all the members of the Chatterjee family were open to psychic influences. This helped them into deep meditations, making them lose their identity completely in the thought of their chosen ideal. This often happened to Ramsala, Kutharam's sister, when she meditated on the goddess Sitala. At such times, she was looked upon with respect and awe. Once when Ramsala was in such a mood, Gadadhar was standing by. Instead of being afraid at what he saw, he said afterwards with a smile, "It would be great fun if she who possessed my aunt got hold of me." But the chief characteristic of the boy, to which we have already referred, was his influence over everyone coming in contact with him. The boys with whom he used to play could not bear to be separated from him, and the villagers who had once seen him came again and again to Kutharam's house with sweets or fruits as an excuse to see him. This unusual power of attraction he retained throughout his life. Manik Ram, a great friend of Kutharam, often invited the latter to his house. Once when Gadadhar was 6 years old, he accompanied his father. Manikram said, "Well, I don't think Gadadhar is an ordinary child. He has unusual marks on his body. His presence really gladdens my heart, and I wish you would often bring him with you." After that, if Kutharam were unable to go to see Manik, the latter would send for Gadadhar. The boy would spend the entire day with him, returning in the evening laden with presents. We have already referred to the strong influence of religious books on the susceptible mind of Gadadhar. Whenever he read such books to the villagers, he did so with such feeling that for the time being he seemed to lose his own identity, and the audience would be spellbound. His relatives could not understand this and ascribed it to hysteria. Soon, it was found that not only books, but beautiful scenery or some touching incident was sufficient to make him lose himself, and the village abounded in such stimuli. Nature's beauties and sublimities could be seen there in their primitive glory. One day, an occurrence of this kind caused great anxiety to his parents and relatives. Sri Ramakrishna in later years narrated this incident to his devotees in his usual poetic way. We give here the substance of what he said. In that part of the country, meaning Kamarpukar, the boys are given puffed rice for luncheon. This they carry in small wicker baskets, or if they're too poor, they tie it in a corner of their cloth. Then they go out for play on the roads or in the fields. One day, in June or July, when I was 6 or 7 years old, I was walking along a narrow path separating the paddy fields, eating some of the puffed rice which I was carrying in a basket. Looking up at the sky, I saw a beautiful somber thundercloud. As it spread, rapidly enveloping the whole sky, a flight of snow-white cranes flew overhead in front of it. It presented such a beautiful contrast that my mind wandered to far-off regions. Lost to outward sense, I fell down, and the puffed rice was scattered in all directions. Some people found me in that plight and carried me home in their arms. That was the first time I completely lost consciousness in ecstasy. Though he seemed quite well when he regained consciousness, Gadadhar's parents were greatly frightened. Kutharam thought it wise to take precautions against a recurrence of this episode, lest it should do the boy bodily harm at his tender age. But Gadadhar reassured him by telling him that he had simply lost all outward consciousness as his mind was overpowered by an inexpressible emotion and unspeakable joy. However, his parents kept him from school for several days. I hope you like this chapter. We need volunteers and sponsors to create content with even better quality and with more variety. If you wish to join this initiative as a volunteer or sponsor, please click the links given in description below. To help us reach more viewers, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Biography Central. Thank you for your time. It means a lot. Namaste.